Thank you, councillors and galleries and staff. Welcome to the Uralla Shire Council meeting of the 26th of May 2026, and the time is now 4 p.m. Special welcome to Mrs. Wright, so thank you for coming in, and for ex-councillor and Mayor and Deputy Mayor, Councillor Strutt, so welcome, Councillor Strutt. I'll do the prayer, and then we will I'll ask the recognition of traditional custodians, and then I'll ask the acting general manager to, is it induct or induce, or what's the word we use for induct? Our new councillor Wright. So congratulations. Prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask that you grant your blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of our Shire and Australia. Amen. The recognition of traditional custodians. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live and work. We recognise and appreciate their deep connection to this land, waters and our community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who call Uralla Shire home. So, Mr. Acting General Manager, I'll hand over to you for the induction. Thank you very much.
Stephen Wright as the first official item of business. As the first official item of business at this council meeting on the 26th of May 2026, being the first meeting of council following the by-election held on the 18th of April 2026. I will now ask Councillor-elect Stephen Wright to come forward and make an affirmation of office as required by the Local Government Act.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. I, Stephen Wright, solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of Uralla Shire local government area and Uralla Shire Council, and I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
Thank you, Councillor. I have one thing here for you to sign, which is the affirmation. I do have a second thing for you to sign, but we'll do that later, and you get the keys to the metaphorical kingdom. Mr. Mayor, I confirm the affirmation has been taken and will be recorded in the minutes, and on behalf of everybody, including the councillor's partner, I welcome you to the council team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. One of the things that I realised that I didn't do when this council was set up, and I might start by for today, is if the Councillor Wright can give us under 5 minutes of what his hopes and aspirations for being a member of the Shire and what skills he believes he brings to the party, so to the chamber. So, as I say, I apologise. I should have done it when the new council was formed, but Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. And the Mayor's very appropriate comment about the length with which I will speak is very relevant, given he endured my address to the Uralla Rotary Club last night. Very briefly, as you know, I was a new resident to Uralla at the end of January, February this year. I decided to run for council with the very sad and untimely passing of Mrs. Petrov. And so I took that opportunity, and through the process of New South Wales optional preferential voting, I find myself taking the oath of office today. So I do thank the electors of the Uralla Shire, Ward A, for their support, and I hope that I can bring skills and experience and good humour to bear on my time as a councillor. The reason I think that I can assist the Uralla Shire and its residents in this role is I have a career that has included moments of close encounter with governance and the legal systems in New South Wales with which local government is subject. I do understand how difficult the role of local government is in the 3 tiers of government, and I would very much like to play a role in supporting Uralla and Uralla Shire Council in achieving all the best outcomes it can, given what we face, particularly at the moment with the agendas of the New South Wales government. So thank you again, and I hope, Mayor, that I can contribute fulsomely to council life. Thank you.
I'm going to say, Councillor Arnold will keep an eye on the red button. Councillors, webcasting, this council meeting is being live streamed, and so the code of conduct is relevant. The council meeting is live streamed. Attendance constitutes consent to the broadcast of your image and voice. The recordings will be published on council's website and retained for the legislative required period. Anyone who does not wish to be recorded must leave before the meeting begins. Only council may record or live stream the meeting unless prior written approval is obtained. All attendees must silence electronic devices. Participants must not make defamatory statements or remarks, and anyone behaving in a disorderly manner may be removed under council's code of meeting practice. Thank you, councillors. Are there any declarations of interest or disclosures? Acting General Manager, we don't have any.
None received, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, if we find through the meeting that anybody believes they have, then the appropriate time. Councillors, I'm not going to ask that we recognise Councillor Burrows as an apology at this stage. However, given her circumstances, however, there may be a stage where I'll ask for council to do that, but at this stage I'll list her as a, if you like, a late attendee. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Councillors, item 7 is the confirmation of minutes. Item 7.1. I've got somebody that moved the minutes of the meeting held the 28th of April 2026. Councillor Arnold. Councillor Dora and I noticed, and I tossed up whether we should be given the item that was discussed around the Thunderbolt Festival, and we pulled up in the middle of it, whether I should list it when the actual resolution was made or when the meeting started. I know we had the lunch break in the middle, so your view is that it should be at the start of it, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just feel the minutes should be a true reflection of the meeting. And what occurred was that we went about halfway through the Thunderbolts Festival draft terms of reference as a 355 committee, which is item 13.4. Then it was decided to have a tea break or a dinner break in the middle of that item, which I, at the time, mentioned I thought that was unusual. However, that's what happened. And so we broke for nearly half an hour and then came back. So it's a bit of an unusual situation, but I just feel that minutes should be a true reflection of what happened. So that's why I put it forward.
Councillor Arnold, are you happy if that item is changed about so that the item commenced before the dinner break and then was resolved afterwards? So, council, that would mean a swap. Are there any other questions from the minutes, please, councillors? With that amendment, please, all those in favour? I had you. Sorry, I will steady up. Councillors, item 9, the Mayor's activity report for April 2026. I'm obviously happy to move the activity report for 2026. Is there anybody who has any questions before I look for a seconder? Councillor Blakester?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Page 5, you mention a solar farm meeting. I wondered if you could clarify which. There's obviously one operating, but a few more in the offing. And then the meeting with Dawn Renewables mentioned on page 6. I just wondered if you could add a few points of what was covered in those, if that was all right.
Yes, thank you for that. The solar farm meeting was with ASIN on site. Obviously, part of it was the issue around the rating discussion, so I pre-warned them that that letter was coming, dependent on council's resolution following our meeting. And the second one with Dawn are another company that have shown an interest in this area. And to be really clear, if it comes up again, I have done some consulting work for Dawn, so I removed myself once it got into that negotiation stage. So at this stage, we haven't seen any we haven't seen an application for an EIS or, so yeah, that's the two there. Councillor Doran?
Thank you. I was just wondering about the meeting with Justin Williamson at Bundara, what that was about.
A preliminary meeting around a number of issues. He has a real estate agency there, and he was keen for us to look to what issues could be progressed with staff. So each of those items I brought back for the acting general manager and our director of planning to consider. And I think the issue he's also the president of the Bundara Sport and Rec Club, so I gave some further information back and passed that on. So thank you. Councillors, if there's no other questions, I'll ask for a seconder, please. Councillor Philp, thank you. All those in favour? Councillors, given that I'm just trying to get my eyes around, I think some of it's standard. Let me know if I miss you, please. Councillors, item 12.1, the Bundara Committee draft minutes of the meeting held the 13th of May 2026. The recommendation of council receives the draft minutes of the Bundara Community Committee meeting held on the 13th of May 2026. Somebody prepared to move that recommendation? Councillor Philp. Would you like to speak to that? Any of the minutes, Councillor Philp?
Only if people have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Councillor Doran, you have a question? Yeah, just while we go, Councillor Philp, if you're happy to answer it, otherwise.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of things I wanted to mention. On page 22 of the minutes, which I'm just getting to. 4.3 at the bottom of the page, general business. It talks about Just a Farmer, the feature film presentation, and says that the PNC have been looking into this as well. The PNC were looking at grants for this. I understood that the PNC actually had applied for a grant at that stage for the screening of the film and also for some audio type equipment that would then help with the screening and be available for additional use at a later stage. So I just wanted that clarification on that one. Maybe I'll just do them one at a time, I guess, if you wanted to comment on that.
So Matthew Monk is having a chat to Lindsay to see what they can do maybe together, but it has been locked in for the date that the 14th of June. So I'm not sure if it's going to be a PNC and a community thing or if it's still a PNC and we're using our venue. So I'll have to check with Matt about that.
Thank you. My comment was that PNC had actually applied for a grant, not that they were looking at grants for this. So thank you for the update with it, but it was more a correction to the minutes that PNC actually did apply for the grant, is what I was indicating. And the other thing was about the races, which is on the next page. And it says that the races will be on again. However, the discussions in the meeting was that would depend on the rain, that if it was too dusty, they actually would be called off and they wouldn't be on again. Although I noticed there's an advertising which states that they will be on and doesn't sort of put in that conditions. So I just wanted to mention that as well. And then finally, more around the actual submission of the paper to the council meeting. I'm just wondering if, well, I notice on page 8 of the business paper that there's actually no financial or long-term financial implication for this committee. So I'm wondering for future business papers, could that please be filled in? Because the reason I'm asking is because Thunderbolts Festival was knocked back as a 355 committee due to the financial and resourcing constraints. So if this is a 355 committee and it's saying there's no financial or implications whatsoever, then I'm not understanding why Thunderbolts Festival would have been treated differently. So what I'm asking for, could the financial implications please be put in for the future business papers? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Blaster?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Acting GM, just had a request on page 8 of the report to council, the performance measures, which is pretty much the same wording each meeting, but I think it would be good to acknowledge that there are other community members that attend as well. And so this acknowledges community members and council representatives, but each meeting is well attended by broader interested parties, which I think adds to the strength. And it's only a minor change, but I think it has an importance just to acknowledge the level of engagement and participation. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for that. Yeah, if there are no other questions, a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Mailer. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Item 12.2, Compliance and Assurance Committee Report. Recommendation, and I won't read it, it is on page 10. There are 10 items there for council to work through. Councillor Arnold, did you wish to speak to that recommendations?
So I'll start again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge that all of the reports that came to us at that meeting are indicating some really positive progress along the lines of the governance materials, the clinical material that we are receiving. There are obviously still a way to go with a number of things, but I am reassured that the committee itself is now operating at a mature level and keeping an eye on things as is needed. And I think that, yes, so it's positive.
Thank you. If anybody's got any questions of Councillor Arnold, Councillor Blakeston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not of Councillor Deputy Mayor Arnold, but the matters that I put on email with regard to these motions, and the ones that, in my view, are policies of this elected body. So we're not merely noting them, we're either adopting them and approving them as our policies, but we haven't delegated that authority to ACCA or staff, to my knowledge. And then I have comments on the policies themselves.
I'm going to take advice on that. Mr. Williams, would you like to comment on that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I might hand over to Group Manager Community, other than to make the comment that the approach that we have taken with these policies is that they were operationally focused. They were guiding the operations of aged care, but I think Blake might be able to speak better to that than I.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Blaster. In terms of the way that we are looking at these documents, they're policies that relate to our aged care services, not necessarily policies of council, which council makes itself. They're not quite general managers' directives either. These are a suite of policies and procedures that we purchase from GGJ, which is a subscription-based provider that gives us a suite of policies that addresses all of our requirements in relation to the Aged Care Act and the aged care rules. They're constantly updated, and unfortunately they are called policies, which can be a little bit confusing in terms of how they sit within the hierarchy of our governance framework. But it would be really difficult to call them something else than a policy. So the approach that I was taking was calling them an aged care policy, so that we don't have to go through this extensive suite of policies and procedures which provide guidance to council staff, and also is something that we're audited on when they come in and audit our aged care services to make sure that these things are in place. These particular documents that were provided to ACCA at first instance and then through ACCA up to council are really a document. So I guess I'll address the clinical governance framework first. So that's a document that sets out the clinical governance framework for Mickmore Gardens, and provides a written framework that anyone can refer to understand how the clinical governance responsibilities for Mickmore Gardens are managed, but then also how that fits into the overarching structure of council. Ordinarily, you'd have these suite of documents that would go to the board of an aged care provider, but we are in a slightly awkward position because we're a council, and the council is the governing body, which is the pseudo board of our aged care services. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to fit these into our overarching governance framework. So that's a particular document that relates to Mickmore Gardens itself, not the overall clinical governance framework for all of our aged care services. So there will have to be a clinical governance framework developed for TCS and TCT, although that's going to look somewhat different because it doesn't have the same requirements that a residential aged care facility does. In terms of the governance for aged care Uralla Shire Council Care Policy document that's been put up, that's a document that is similarly trying to capture how our governance framework works within council's overarching governance framework. But it's not a policy of council per se that council needs to approve so that the staff can discharge their responsibilities to provide aged care services at Mickmore Gardens and TCS, TCT. So that's why these documents have come up to council to note, because as responsible persons who sit on the governing body, it's important that you're aware of how this framework works, but it's not necessarily a document that needs to be approved by council as a policy of council. It's a document that sets out the structure that everyone on council who's at council law needs to be aware of, needs to understand, but it also helps council staff to be able to understand what that reporting chain is and what that chain of responsibility or that overarching framework of responsibility is. So that's how those documents have come to council to be noted and not to be approved as a policy with a big P.
Thank you, Group Manager. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Mailer?
Apology. Just on item 7, note 7, acknowledging the emerging financial risk associated with Commonwealth funding arrangements. I just wondered whether we can have an expansion on what those financial risks associated with Commonwealth funding are.
I just might ask the group manager to comment again, given the frustrations he's had recently. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Mailer. In terms of the emerging financial risks associated with the Commonwealth funding arrangements, this is referring to some of these structural issues that have been identified in the rollout of the Support at Home program. So as councillors would be aware, I'm trying to share information as it comes up via email as to issues that are arising. There was an article that I shared this afternoon which talks about a report that was put out by Stuart Brown in December 2025 for that quarter, which was October, November, December, which covered the transition from home care packages to support at home. And it noted that there was an industry-wide downward trend in terms of the profitability of the sector. I would expect that that trend would continue when a further report comes out in January to March, based upon the conversations that I've been having with Gunnedah Council and with Glen Innes Shire Council, who are both councils that provide aged care services in the same way that we do. And then based upon a lot of reports and articles that I've been seeing that have been put out there. The main reason for it, well, there's a couple of reasons for it. Firstly, that change in the care management and the package management, effectively reducing it from 35% down to 10%, has had a market effect. That's been noted in the difficulty of trying to cover fixed admin costs out of pricing that into the prices. And that's part of the reason why the Commonwealth Government recently deferred the price caps that it was going to introduce from July 2026 indefinitely, because I think they're understanding there's a couple of things that might come out of that if they do that. One, that's going to set the price that everyone's going to go to. And two, there's a range of prices and costs inputs from metro as compared to regional and rural. So there's some difficulties there. The Commonwealth, I think, has also recently acknowledged some of the difficulties in people taking up services and some of the chilling effect that requiring co-contributions has had on people taking up aged care services, which has resulted in the department, the Commonwealth Government, announcing that from 1 October they're going to include personal care as a clinical service, which means that there's no co-contribution that's payable. And the reason why that's important is because for pensioners, that was in the independence category, which meant that they'd have to make a 5% contribution towards the cost of those services. So to put that in perspective, for our pensioners who weren't grandfathered in, who got new packages, our per hour service for personal care is $100, so they'd have to co-contribute $5 for each personal care service. The people who need that personal care, which is the daily showering and whatnot, they can require that anywhere from twice a week up to, twice a day. So that can get quite expensive for pensioners who are on a fixed income. So it's very important that things like that get moved into a category where there's no co-contribution. Also, there's been an understanding that the package utilisation has gone down as well. So what that means is that there's more funding, there's more packages that have been given out, but there's less services being taken up by each package holder. And so that impacts our bottom line as well. So I had a meeting with with Naomi Markham from the Aged Care Commonwealth Department on Thursday 2 weeks ago. And I raised all of these issues with her and took staff along to explain to her in great detail a lot of the issues that we're facing because of the structural changes that have come into place with the changes from the Aged Care Act. At point 8, and that also leads into the second point at point 8, which was the issue that we identified around the 60% funding for new packages. So as councillors may recall, there was a lot of media that went out where there's been a huge delay in new packages being granted, and so the department came up with a way to release more packages by releasing packages with 60% funding. There was a lack of clarity around what that 60% meant. Because they were being released in November, a lot of people took that to mean there's 9 months left in the year. That's roughly 66% of the year. So 60% is going to cover it, and you get the full funding at the new financial year. What actually it turns out that it meant is across the quarter, they'd fund at 60%. There was no explanation or training around this, and there was no way for providers to identify this. So when people get notified that their package is going to get funded, they get a letter and it says your package has been funded, and we get that letter from the client. It's not uploaded onto My Aged Care, so we have no visibility around that. They then get a second letter which says your package has been funded to 60%, and we don't see that letter, and there was no way on My Aged Care for us to identify that either. So no communication from the department as to how we can identify any of our clients who have been funded to 60%. So the way that we found this out is when we put in our return for March, we were expecting, I think it was 136,000 in claims to come through, and we got paid 121,000 odd. In terms of claims. Some of that was the co-contribution that our clients had to pay, but there was roughly around $10,000 shortfall because when we got to March, that was the third month in the quarter and their funding had run out. So there was that 40% gap that was there. So that's the first time that we identified this 60% issue. When we contacted the department, we were given the runaround and we were pointed to conflicting pieces of information. And then they said, the way that you identify it is you go into Proda, which is the portal where you can see their budgets, and you can see their budget is 60% funded. So you've got to first sign them up, then log them on the portal, then you go into their budget and you can see whether or not they're at full or 60% funding, because we don't get the letter that the client gets. The other issue that we've had is we can't rely upon that budget information, because in some cases we've seen that the budget, when it is meant to roll over at the end of the quarter, we're meant to see either 10% or $1,000 remains, and then you start again in the new quarter. Some of them, the budget just seems to roll over and they haven't done that sweeping thing. So we've had a very strong conversation with the department around this. And I said to the representative from the department, I'm expecting a refund for this because they've said we're not going to get refunded for the $10,000 shortfall that we identified in March. And I said, we just can't carry this. The other issue that we have is when they run out of funding, we identified that this funding shortfall, they said initially it was going to be 10 weeks where you get your 60% and then you get your 40% 10 weeks later. We had someone who was on a level 8 package, which is the highest level of need. They went from November until the end of March when they got their full funding. So we've been seeing longer wait times for people with the highest level of care needs. They get this 60% funding. And so those people have been assessed as having this funding that's given to them because their care needs are so high. So what that means then is if we've taken them on as clients, we have a responsibility to make sure that they've got their care needs. If we can't meet them, their only other option is to go to hospital or to go into a nursing home. So it's a really big problem. It's an issue that's been raised across the industry. We've raised this very strongly. What we've had to do to try and top up some of our clients who've been in this situation, which we weren't aware of and a lot of our clients aren't aware of because they get very confused by all this conflicting information and there's not a lot of clear information that's coming out of the department. We've had to go and get additional codes to fund them through CHSP, which is our block funding. And as a result, we've also had to say, we're going to waive your contributions for that because they don't have any money. So we've been left in a financial and a moral situation, not of our own making, and in large part because of the way in which this new act has been rolled out and the lack of training, the lack of communication, and unfortunately the lack of responsibility that the department's been taking up. So I can't really put it any stronger than that. I've put it very strongly and very firmly to them. But there is reform that needs to happen to make this sustainable. As you would have seen in that article that went around, the result of the decline in revenue has meant that the industry at the moment, and that was qualified by saying, one quarter doesn't make a trend, but it's a data point that needs to be taken into account. But if that trend continues, the whole industry is uninvestable. You wouldn't invest in it. What this means for us, and which council does need to be aware of, is how's this going to operate how's this going to impact the financial sustainability of the service, based upon our ability to draw down on reserves via the Community Transport Fund, which can make other services go further with the block funding that we've already got. I think we've probably got a runway of 2 to 3 years. So that's a similar situation that other council providers are facing, but that's the reality. So we've put it to the department in no uncertain terms. There's a lot of advocacy that's going on behind the scenes, but that's the situation that we're in at the moment. There'll probably be a follow-up question, and I might preempt it in saying that when we had this decision that was made in February of last year to continue for a 12-month trial period, what I'm planning on doing is, once I have all of my financial acquittals done and financial reporting done for the end of this financial year, I'll bring a report back to council with analysis on where we're at, where we're heading, and I'll have a bit more data to go with. So on a positive note, our revenue is increasing. So our claim for this month was higher than the claim for the previous month, and that's been some improvement around claiming for care minutes. So previously, when we did our care management claiming, we just got the 35%. We charged it to each client and we got the 35%. The change that they've made now is you need to claim it like a lawyer in billable, 15-minute increments. So part of the issue that we had is we were underclaiming because we hadn't provided adequate training to our staff to make that claiming. So that training's now been put in place. We're seeing a growth in revenue solely because of that. Also, we're getting some additional packages, but that is an easy win for us. So that's something that is trending upwards. But by the end of this financial year, I'll have a much clearer picture of how we're tracking.
Councillor Doran.
So can I just check? So now, in the end of what you've provided to us, that information, but it's not just McMoores, it's TCS&T is what you're referring to. Those when you're talking about home care packages and those packages, that's actually related to that, not ACCA as such, is that? Or are there a blurring of the both and I don't quite get it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Doran, these are issues that we're bringing to ACCA, so that ACCA's aware of these things. ACCA's reporting this back to council, but these issues are related to TCS/TCT, not McMoore Gardens. McMoore Gardens is travelling along fine. It's just a continuation of the issues that we've been having a rolling discussion about with TCS/TCT.
I do have some further questions with your indulgence, if I may. So thank you. I just wanted to check that point because I could see that's what my understanding of it was, and I just wanted to check on that. Just looking at the recommendations, so point 1 is receive and note the minutes. So just going to the minutes on page 7, which is 33 of the attachment. I don't know if this has already been picked up, but those dates, there's a typo. So D, I believe, should be Tuesday, the 4th of May, 2027, not 2026.
Yes.
Excellent. And the other thing I had was just in the terms of reference. So if I just jump to that, which is page 63 is what I've noted as my reference point. So I can see there's a change that, so 4.1.6, which is report minutes of each committee meeting to the governing body and to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, which is ARIC. So 4.1.6 and 4.1.7 both refer to ARIC. So I'm understanding that the chair of ACCA is actually a member of ARIC. So I'm just a little bit concerned that there's not like a separation of an independence, that we've got the chair of ACCA being a member of ARIC. They're both very small committees. I think there's 3 or 4 people on both committees. So an overlap of one is quite an overlap. I'm raising that as a concern.
I would say that we're extremely lucky to have Dr. Kayla taking over those two. So the fact that there's a tie between the two, I don't see any issue for council or our administration. But thank you for that question. Any other questions? Councillor Blaisler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We spent a lot of time making a distinction between policies and directives. These two policies now just create confusion around that. I heard the long-winded answer. I think there's got to be better language.
What you mean to say is you've heard an excellent answer from our staff.
That's your term. Your term. There are issues with both of those documents. I don't think the scope is at all clear in the clinical governance to have one word that says residential is the scope. There's duplicate copy of the same words being used in 2 sections that hopefully is not in the template that we bought. And then the governance document, whatever the right way to describe it, has, I think, inaccuracies in it, referring to ARIC as an operational committee. That is not what ARIC is. It's also not under the direction of the general manager and leadership team. So there's gaps and or inaccuracies in those, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you want anything done with that. And then there are 3 documents presented for noting. So I'm willing to concede that these 2 I've just talked about are something, not a policy, not a directive, but are operational, not governance. But the terms of reference for ACCA is unequivocally a governance document. So changes to that have to come through this elected body.
Staff will take that on notice. Thank you, Councillor Blaisdon. Particularly the third item. Any other council questions, councillors? I'm looking for a seconder, please, with Councillor Arnold, and I'll read through thank you, Councillor Philp. I'll put the motion and then I'll read the recommendation, or no, I'll go the other way. I'll read the recommendation and then put the motion. The council receives and notes the minutes and outcomes of the Aged Care Compliance and Assurance Committee meeting held on the 5th of May 2026. 2, notes the strong overall performance of council's aged care services, including continued compliance with the aged care quality standards, positive compliance and monitoring outcomes, low complaints and positive consumer feedback, and ongoing strength of clinical governance arrangements. 3, notes the continued implementation of key governance and quality initiatives, including the revised clinical governance framework, the plan for continuous improvement addressing audit findings and enhancing monitoring, reporting and accounting mechanisms across aged care services. 4, notes the committee's recommendation to incorporate a dedicated aged care and community care workforce strategy within council's workforce strategy plan. 5, notes the updated terms of reference for the Aged Care Compliance and Assurance Committee and support their public exhibition prior to final adoption. 6, notes the governance of aged care, Uralla Shire Council care policy, and endorse its continued operation as part of Council's aged care assurance framework. 7, acknowledge the emerging financial risk associated with the Commonwealth funding arrangements, including the reduction and lack of transparency in approved funding levels and the need for further clarification from the department. 8, notes the committee has requested a further report on the impacts of some of the support at home packages, having been funded only to 60% without providing aged care providers with adequate information about which packages have only been funded to this level. 9, initiates the ongoing progress against compliance, audit actions and continuous improvement initiatives will continue to be reported to council through the committee's quarterly reporting framework. All those in favour? Thank you. That Councillor Blakeson and Councillor Doran voted against. Thank you. Thank you, Group Manager. Item 13.1, the Central Northern Regional Library Agreement. That Council approve the renewal of the Central Northern Regional Library Agreement 2026 for a further 5-year period. Have I got somebody to move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Any questions? Councillor Doran?
Thank you. I'll just catch up with my notes. I think. I'm noting that in the financial and long-term plan of the report, which is page 12, it's talking about the budgeting of up to $127,000 for next year's contribution of our membership in the library system, which seems a lot. So if that's what all of the members are paying Tamworth Regional Council to run the Central Northern Regional Library, if all the parties are paying $127,000, I feel like we're not really getting much for that. And it seems like an awful lot of money. So I'm wondering, have we considered working with Armidale? Is there another option? Much as I love and need and value library services, I totally get it. But for our little council, do we get value for $127,000 value out of it is my question.
The reality is, Councillor Doran, that we have no opportunity at this meeting to decide one way or the other, because the questions you ask, I can't answer. I can't tell you how much the other councillors pay. I can't tell you what it would cost to join Armidale. So if you like to move and somebody will second it, that we defer it and give you that information. Otherwise, I would support the recommendation that we continue with Central North. Somebody prepared to second that we defer it all and put it away?
Well, sorry. So I was just going to ask, because I think Councillor Arnold's our representative on that group. So do you have any further information?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Doran, what I do know, I don't know the details of the budget. I don't know the answer about Armidale. What I do know, however, is the benefits that I've seen in my very short time since taking over from Councillor Petrov, that there are enormous benefits to the networking and the sharing of resources that happens in that network. And I'm amazed at the meetings where everyone comes together that there's an enormous amount of information and sharing, but also using each other as information for other projects. And you see that happen across the whole network. So all I can do is commend that to council as something that I would be very hesitant to think about changing at this point, while having heard your concern about the money.
Tom, have you got, Councillor O'Connor, have you got your hand up or not?
Mr. Mayor, my experience with Central North Library and the investigations that we have done along the way, I noticed that this says 127,000, which, as Councillor Doran has pointed out, it's higher than what I would expect. It's 11.4% above 114,000. The amount that we pay, that is each of the contributed councils pay, is based upon a formula of population. So the 127 is what not everyone pays. The other point is, I can give you a couple of examples. One is that Narrabri came in. after Gunnedah went out. Gunnedah decided at one point that it could do it better itself, so it left. Narrabri came in because they found that it was economical. It's always been, in my experience, whilst I was actually doing the figures, that it was much cheaper than going on our own and going with Armidale. We always did those calculations. So I would suggest that the 127,000 is not the amount that will be raised by Central Northern Library to us. It seems to be implied that it could be adjusted downward if required in the first quarterly budget review. I suggest that I would be fearful. I would be fearful if it was 127,000, but I doubt if it will be.
Councillor Arnold?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. What I can commit to doing is to do more looking into that, if you like, into the detail of that and find out and come back with that information if that is helpful.
Yeah, we've got a five-year contract, further 5-year period. So I'll take what Councillor O'Connor's point. My memory of all those discussions without being closely involved in it was that this was by far the best option, given that I think at one stage Armidale said we could join and they wanted us to contribute to their building. We do have a sharing arrangement with Armidale that people that live in our shire can use their regional library, but but as far as being able to tell you what the other councils do, as I say, if Councillor Arnold can provide that information. So I'm left in your hands, councillors. We approve the renewal and get that other information. Councillor Blakester?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Can anyone answer what the assets are that Central Northern Regional Library holds? There's reference to those in a couple of places, but particularly page 12 of the open agenda. And then second question is whether or not it's possible to acknowledge for the Bandara Library, acknowledge the role and contribution of the Country Women's Association, because that's done in partnership with them, but they're not mentioned, and I think that's important.
We can find the information on the assets and we can ensure that Bandara is included. Obviously, it's difficult with the passing of Councillor Petrov. She was the deputy chairperson of the Central Northern Library. So, councillors, I'm in a quandary. If I get a seconder, I'm going to put the motion. Councillor Mailer, on the basis that we get that other information, but we've signed it. I would say councillors approve the renewal of the Central Northern Regional Library Agreement 2026 for a further 5-year period. Move Councillor Arnold, seconded Councillor Mailer. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Councillor Wright, you wish to vote? Yep, thank you. I guess in hindsight, some of those would be helpful sort of a couple of days before to be able to chase that information for you, councillor, because it is a big call. Councillors, item 13.2, the loans is of the 30th of April 2026. The council notes the total loans position of 30th of April 2026 is 1,053,904. Somebody prepared to move that? Councillor Mailer. Any questions, councillors? A seconder, please. Councillor Phil, all those in favour? Thank you. We will get to $1 million, under $1 million, I'm sure. Investments as of the 30th, item 13.3, investments as of the 30th of April 2026. Recommendation on page 15. Is somebody prepared to move it? And then I'll work through the recommendation.
This is 30.3.
Yes, 13.3. Sorry, Councillor O'Connor. Councillors, the recommendation, that I'll take questions and then I'll read the recommendation. Any questions, councillors? No? Right, thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Mailer. The council notes the cash position of the 30th of April 2026 consisting of cash and overnight funds of 1,922,801, term deposits of 21 million, total cash and term deposits of $22,922,801 as of the 30th of April 2026. And item 2, restrictions are reconciled on a quarterly basis as of the 31st of March. Total cash and investments was $24,567,924, comprising of $19,008,509 in internal restrictions and $4,514,070 in internal restrictions, leaving an unrestricted balance of $1,045,345. This compares with an unrestricted cash balance of $1,112,649 as of September the 31st of December 2025. Just one question, Mr. Acting General Manager, has there been any significant change to that cash figure that I just read out that we're aware of?
CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This month, particularly April and May, by past trend, is always a negative month. And on the top of that, Council has been spending money from its own fund for the stormwater events, and other one was local road maintenance, which was supposed to be funded from roads to recovery. These are the two main reasons the fund has reduced by around $2 million. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, just to answer what I thought your question was, and not to my knowledge, we haven't got any money in.
Yes, my concern, noting other councillors' concerns are if it got worse. Thank you, councillors. I'll put the item 13.3, move Councillor O'Connor, second to Councillor Muller. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Item 13.4, the monthly finance report as for April 2026. The recommendation council receives the monthly finance report for April 2026. Would somebody prepared to move it? Councillor O'Connor. Questions, councillors? Councillor O'Connor.
Mr. Mayor, my questions are more preparatory for the next item of the budget. However, I'd like to draw attention to the fact that the materials and services, in this report, the quarterly budget review, the quarterly budget, adjusted budget, is in fact the one up to this for the second quarter. So therefore, the difference between the items which is reflected, the $2,834,000 is the difference between the current situation and the original budget. Thank you.
Do you want to follow up? No, I think the council was pointing out the difference between the quarterly budget review figure and the
My point was that the comparison of this one, which is the financial statements at the end of April, is the comparison to the budget review to December. So what's the problem? The issue that's flowing from the 2,834 is actually part of the discussion in item 13.5. So I was just drawing attention to the fact that I'm saying yes to this because we got a budget review to the problem areas. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Blakester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions on some very obvious areas of variance. So for the water fund revenue, as well as capital expenditure, and then for the sewer fund capital expenditure, if through you we could get some explanation as at the end of April for those very significant differences, please.
Which page are you on there, councillor, if I can ask?
So page 94 of the attachments, the income statement and capex by fund. Yeah, so water fund revenue is, like 1.4 million shy of the full year budget with only a couple of months to go. And then capex, both, so water fund notwithstanding all the urgent emergency issues we've had, and so too sewer fund. They're very large differences.
CFO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Water fund user fees and charges basically reduced because of drought condition. The water consumption was less, and historically, in the winter season, I mean, the first half of the year is usually winter months. During that time, the consumption is relatively lower. And interest on investment income has not been allocated yet. That will be done at the end of the year. That's another reason why interest income is low. And in the area of materials and services, and as well as capital expenses, these are the reason of ongoing water mains breaking issues. And in the sewer fund, the interest income yet to be allocated. And for the shortfall, underspent in capital expense in the sewer fund, I would request comment probably from engineering team. Thank you. Miles.
I just might ask the acting director to make a comment, please, before we go forward.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, councillors. Look, it's true. Look, there's it's probably some catch-up expenditure for us around some of those areas, particularly in water and sewer. We've had some significant challenges over the last couple of months. I mean, most of you are very familiar, of course, with the issues we've had with the reticulation system. There have been a number of breaks. Of course, they always tend to occur at really inopportune times, which often means we're bringing in contractors and we've got staff in on overtime, etc., to deal with those. But in addition to that, some think that you're probably a little less aware of are some of the asset issues that we are starting to experience with rapidly aging assets at both the water treatment and the sewer plants. And so that's some work that the staff are currently doing, some very detailed asset planning around to get a better handle on some of the risks that we think that we're facing in that area. And look, that's work that we'll be pleased to be able to report to you in due course as we get a complete handle on it. So at the moment, I know the staff are deep in work trying to get a better understanding just currently of the reticulation system. We've got some detailed asset valuations, but what we now need to do is we're trying to cross-reference some of that with where we're experiencing some of the breaks in the reticulation system, let alone, as I said, a number of issues just with ageing infrastructure. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time, councillors, for a team that's sort of rebuilding its capacity to get right on top of the issues. But I've got to say, I've been pretty impressed with the passion and the diligence that they're really chasing these things down with. So hopefully that gives you some insight, councillor.
Mr. Mayor, just observe, given those comments, I would expect we'd be over budget, not under. So that's what still confuses me. The money's being burned somewhere, but I'm not clearly seeing it here. And then in terms of revenue, the QBRS predicts that the water fund revenue is going to come in just short of the same annual total. So there's a lot of ground to make up in just 2 months of trading. And so that still worries me, that variant.
Yeah, I think that one of the issues, and it reflects some latent issues around water main upgrades where we have money put aside for doing all of these major upgrades, which I would say, and there was a period of void and that wasn't occurring as it should have been. So there is substantial, and probably we'll see it later in the reports, available in internal restrictions that can pick up the slack. The other bit is that I'm not as pessimistic about, as soon as you bring in water restrictions, people will actually use more water, not less. So I'm interested to see how that pans out. But your point's well made. Thank you, Councillor Buxton. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. It might just be a little thing, but on page 93 of the attachments, so point 2 talks about the use of fees and charges are higher primarily due to the recovery of legal fees from overdue ratepayers. I'm wondering, are they actually ratepayers, or is any of that water bills instead of rates? And
I need to take you to the last question in the open council where it itemises where councils work, remembering back to our recommendation that council staff pursue water rate charges. Yeah. And so if you go to the last page of our attachments on
Register of Actions.
So it goes, and I'll get the right number.
So that refers to water bills. So I'm just wondering if that point 2 is actually accurate. Is it overdue? Or is it, so it's not rates from ratepayers?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
So, yeah, and the item I was looking for on the other council is 13.11. Thank you very much. Any other questions, councillors? But I think, Councillor Blakesy, your point's well made that this is an area that we need more information on, without a doubt. So I have moved by Councillor O'Connor. Have we got a seconder, please? Councillor Naylor. All those in favour that council receives the attached monthly finance report for April 2026. Thank you, councillors. Item 13.5, third quarterly budget review 2025-26 QBRS. The council receives and notes the third quarterly budget review summary for the 2025-26 financial year and adopts the adjustments to budget allocations. Somebody move that and we can have discussions, please. Councillor O'Connor, I'm going to ask the Acting General Manager to comment on this prior to asking the Chief Finance Officer. There are a number of areas that obviously is serious concern to Council. So, Acting General Manager.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, through you. Councillors, there's 5 major points, 4 of which I can probably talk about in detail, but and I might swing to the Group Manager Infrastructure or the Acting Director if I need some backup. I think everybody's well aware of the snowstorm-related expenses, where we have expended to date $2 million on recovery, none of which has been yet repaid through Reconstruction New South Wales. The 1.5 million of that has been claimed, and are claims that are ongoing that have not been paid out yet. The TCS funding shortfall I won't talk about. The $1 million for local road resealing works. This financial year, we entered year 1 of the new Roads to Recovery 5-year funding grant, and up until the new grant, that grant was always paid in advance, so it was money that came into the bank on an annual basis and then we would spend it. That's now changed, and so that $0.95 million is for fixing up our Condition 5 roads, which was one of the hot topics we picked in our in last year's planning for this year. That money will come back to us through the R2R grant, but it has to be claimed in retrospect. So it's a bit like the $2 million, which is expected to be paid by RA back to council for expenses incurred in disaster recovery. The $0.7 million water network maintenance and repairs is it goes to what the acting director was talking about with very ageing infrastructure that is beginning to fail at an increasing rate. So there's been additional expenditure there. The $0.44 million in additional depreciation expense was from the independent revaluation of the transport assets, particularly roads, where the value of those roads increased, so our depreciation had to increase in line with that.
Thank you. Would our Manager of Finance like to make a comment or additional information? Item 13.5, the third quarter budget review. I wondered whether you would like to comment on the items that the acting general manager spoke about, particularly in regards to the water network charges, TCS charges, and the local road ceiling charges that are included on page 20. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one comment in particular that is related to water, and I made it in my comment section. The way water breakings are happening and the amount of cash reserve we have at this moment, which is a bit alarming. That's the point I want to especially highlight here. And other than this, I think all other adjustment, most of the major adjustments happened during the year are highlighted by the acting general manager, and all other adjustments are basically either I can say minor or trivial. And one of the adjustments for the PCS funding shortfall, this has a corresponding saving in the salaries as well. So this is another point I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Connor, question?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Pages 105 to 112 are what, when I looked down, the same pages which were 235 to 242 in February 2026 I could not make blind bit of sense of, and was able to determine that was the Office of Local Government, and that was nonsense. And I think, well, my thing is that if you look at page 105 and you look at the projected end of year results, and you'll see the figures in the third last column relate to the projected year-end result. And we're talking about figures which are, quite honestly, a nonsense. So I cannot reconcile it. So maybe the manager of finance, what's his current name? Title?
Chief Financial Officer, I think, at the moment, Councillor.
So, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This statement is still confusing for us as well. We asked the Office of Local Government to give us more clarification. What they say, we cannot really link with this template. So what you see here, if we look at the employee benefit and cost, this one includes both operational and capital expenses. At the same time, materials and services, the operational and capital expense both are included in this line. That is the reason why the bottom line is not matching with our council's own template. Yes. Yes.
Fair.
For the rest of the councillors, that projects a deficit of 17.941 million.
That's not good.
Well, it wasn't right in February for the December. It's not right now. So I spent a lot of time on it and I can't make sense of it.
Sorry, councillors, just to clarify, for anybody that wasn't following that, these templates are a construct of the Office of Local Government that we are required to follow, and they produce figures that are of no earthly use to any party. So I'm not quite sure we're required to do it, but we faithfully do it for the minister's benefit.
So I think we'll take from that no, it's not $17 million. We'll need to continue to work to make sure that whatever steps we need to take to get the Office of Local Government to get, not ask us things that are BS. Is that too bright? No. Okay.
Understand?
Yeah, Councillor Doran.
So I'm wondering, given that and the concern that some of our residents may have when they hear that that is the reporting, could we have a solid explanation statement without the last bit that you just said, that that would just provide some explanation and assurance to not only the councillors but generally people? Because if this is already in the public, this is in the public domain, it's a public business paper. It's more than a bit concerning. Like, I think we need to actually have it. We've got a responsibility to explain that if we can.
I'll leave that with the acting general manager. I'm more than happy to sign off a document that sets out that for the as part of our communications, media communications. So thank you, Councillor Doran.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
That's a letter I would love to write, Councillor. I shall do so.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Blakester.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few questions, given the precariousness of our circumstance. First one, with regard to the snowstorm expenditure, the cumulative spend now is give or take 2 mil. We've claimed 1.5. My question is that gap of $500,000, in theory at least, claimable?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Yes, we're still collecting the evidence to apply to the claims. The whole lot will be claimed.
Great, thank you. And then with respect to the roads to recovery and this $1 million that we're now obliged to spend upfront and claim back, what's the likely time frame that we're going to have to carry that $1 million spend before we get $1 million back?
I'll pass that to the acting director, Mr. Mayor, if I may. But I'd say there has been a concession because many people have gone back to R2R. Every council's in the same boat. There has been an acknowledgement that at least for capital projects, we can show them the plan and our costings up front. They will then give us the money, then we do the work. So the amount we have to expend to get the money is reduced, which will be a far better system. But that's a change in process, requires a bit more upfront work on our side. Acting Director.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Blackstone. There's across the 4-year period, there's approximately $5 million in the Roads to Recovery grant that we receive. And so we'll receive, across those 4 years, we'll receive that funding. So it will happen as we have approved projects and then they're reimbursed to us. And as the acting general manager just said, there has been somewhat of a concession in relation to some of the capital works projects. I would just also point that in addition to just talking about the $1 million that council has spent, we do have a requirement, as most of you would be aware, to actually fund a certain degree of our works on our own local roads via council's own funds. Remember, so it's a requirement of that funding that enables us to receive, a combination of roads to recovery, but of course our road block, the block grants, and a couple of other sort of, bits and pieces of grants and projects that we've got. So there will always need to be a degree of council expenditure, but the key thing is across that 4-year period, we will make sure that we get the $5 million in grants. So Mr. McClendon and myself are already sort of working through what the process will be for application to sort of accelerate the funding around some of those grants into early next financial year.
Thank you. And then the remark made about TCS, that revenue shortfall, I can see the revenue shortfall in the variance report, but I can't see an equivalent reduction of expenditure in salaries. Can that be highlighted? It just looks like a further hit of 660 grand to me.
Group Manager, Community Services.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's not an equivalent reduction in salaries, but there is an amount that, based upon my review of the reduction in salaries, the CFO will have to confirm the precise figure, but from my reading of the savings in salaries not spent is around about 422,000. There is a revenue shortfall, and that's because we had to pick a number when we were trying to come up with a model. This is me saying, all right, we need to call it for now and readjust going forwards. In terms of the actual deficit, in terms of ongoing operations, as I've said to the council before, I expect that I'll be able to cover that from reserves this year. We're not drawing down on cash reserves for council because we are not losing money before corporate overheads and depreciation are applied, but we're not covering all of the corporate overheads that are charged to us through the business, which is meant to affect the costs to staff that has been allocated to the business to keep it running. So I'm expecting, I think based upon applying a couple of things that weren't in at that time, we were sitting at around about 100,000 down after corporate overheads and depreciation were applied in terms of the operating ongoing deficit for TCS as at the end of this quarter. I'm expecting it to be less than what I can draw down on out of the reserve that we've identified. So on paper, we will have a break-even service at the end of this financial year. That's what I'm expecting to get to. But yeah, there's some structural issues that we're going to need to have a hard look at, and that will be the focus of a further report that'll come to council once I've reached the end of the financial year. I've been able to finalise all my acquittals and understand where we're trending, because I'll have by that time another quarter's worth of data that I can refer to as well.
Mr. Mayor, just one last point. I think my reading of the reports is correct that the net effect of the garbage truck was a loss of 360 grand to council. Please clarify.
The net loss.
CFO.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Acting General Manager, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The net loss is $60,000.
Can you show me numbers, please, not just words?
If we look at the adjustment in proceed from sale is 300,000 positive in the income side, and net loss and gain from the disposal of assets 361. So 2, need to offset. In the, if we go to the summary of page number 96. Page number 96. If we look at the proposed revision, and last line in the income section is 300,000, and last line in the expense section is 361,000. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just make one
Thank you,
last.
Mr. Mailer. Have you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, for the benefit of the public and council, can staff please outline what advocacy we're doing in regard to some of these shortfalls? Because if you add the numbers up, it's close to 20% of our budget. And there's significant advocacy needs to be actually performed in relation to some of these shortfalls that we're going to see in the budget. And I just wanted to get it on record what sort of advocacy we're actually doing in regard to that. So, and that's probably more so for not just our information, because we can talk amongst ourselves, but for the public.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, can I just confirm you're talking about the 5 dot points with the, yep. On the snowstorm, we had last week a meeting with the new CEO of Reconstruction New South Wales and the acting director to advocate for speeding the process up. There's a combination of two things going on here. One is Reconstruction New South Wales were handed almost a 10-year backlog of payments by Transport for New South Wales that was previously responsible for funding disaster management. They're working their way through that backlog, plus everything we've put on top, snowstorm, tornado, and every other council in the last 2 years. So I'm recognising that fact, but our advocacy was centred around the cash flow issues that it causes, particularly for Uralla, where we don't have a significant reserve to pull back on. And I gave them the numbers of where we're sitting in terms of unrestricted cash on a daily basis versus where we would rather be sitting with unrestricted cash. And so they're well aware of the picture. There is a second issue, and we're trying to do our best to help them negotiate through that, which is they don't have a bucket of money. They have to go and claim that money based on the veracity and evidencing of claims from people like Uralla Council. That second party, which is related to New South Wales Treasury, has a particularly black hat view of what constitutes evidence in a disaster. And it's primarily, at the moment, around having photographs of things before the event and photographs afterwards. So we've certainly got photographs of everything afterwards, but you'll recall shortly before the snowstorm, we started getting serious about buying some AI technology that we could connect to our vehicles and take pictures as we drive around the Shire on a daily basis. So we now have, for example, photographs of every 10 feet of road in the Shire. We didn't have that for the snowstorm. We didn't have that for the tornado, which would have satisfied the evidence. So we're now going through photographs that we've had for years, trying to identify, because they have to be geolocated photographs. They can't just be a photograph, and pulling that together. Every council in New South Wales, particularly in the regions, is going through the same thing. I saw, was it the Mayor of Dubbo? They're in the hole for $44 million in disaster recovery claims that haven't been paid out. So we're not Robinson Crusoe. There has to be a breakthrough on this. RA, to their credit, are being as best at facilitating us to cover the gap as possible. The best example I've got at the moment is Green Gully Bridge, which is the bridge that resides on our neighbour's land next to the Kentucky Creek Dam. It's the bridge on their land that we supplied that gets us to the other side of our dam from where our treatment plant is. And it's also made use of by the Williams in their farming activities, with B-double trucks crossing it, that sort of thing. That was completely blown away in the snowstorm and destroyed, and we've had to put a temporary crossing in there. The repair of that is going to be over $300,000. And we don't have a photo of the old one before it was destroyed. The Williams are helping out by providing stat decks, and they're having their drivers fill out stat decks as well about the operability of the bridge before the event. And that's the sort of thing that we're now down to. So that's for the snowstorm. The water network maintenance repairs, that's really us and us alone. We are that's additional costs we've incurred this year through unplanned breakages. We are currently covering that through our reserve, where council had the precincts to put together cash reserves for both water and sewer. We're eating into the water one, obviously, but we've still got some remaining. So that's on that issue, we are getting in the next week or two a very detailed assessment of our entire water network, including treatment, and the what we should be looking at replacing in what order to minimise the risk. So that's all coming together. On the TCS funding shortfall, I think the group leader sort of explained the advocacy that's going on there, and that's essentially all related to the changes in the Commonwealth's requirements, funding requirements. But not only advocating as Uralla Council, but advocating along with the rest of the sector for change. The local road resealing works funded by council, the almost $1 million. That is money that one had to be spent on the roads. The intention was to spend it using the block grant, and we launched into that unaware that the block grant was not going to just turn up. One had to provide the information before one did it. Either way, that money will be coming back to us in as quick a fashion as we can organise. Whether we get that back in cash through the block grant to fill the hole, or whether we distribute that $900,000 as our co-contributions to the block grant and the Roads to Recovery Fund. But that will be self-closing or self-healing, if I can put it that way. The additional depreciation expense, which is we do a renewal of an asset class every year, and this is what happens every year. That will continue for as long as the Office of Local Government requires us to depreciate non-tradable assets. So that's an ongoing body of work that I was at the recent country mayor's meeting with the deputy mayor a couple of weeks ago, and that was a hot topic again for OLG and the minister. So that's my response to what we're doing. In terms of big ticket items, there's a lot going on behind the scenes as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mailer. I will add to that around the disaster recovery, given that we were approved for emergency works and we spent the money in good faith. Initially, my response was to allow staff to continue to work on a positive vein with the Reconstruction Authority. In the last 3 weeks, I've taken a different tack, and I've actually gone to the local member and said enough's enough. what are they doing? So I look forward to his response, given the last couple of weeks. He's probably had some other things on his mind, but my view is that it can't just be an authority that's holding us up, causing these issues for us. So my view is it's a political matter. Thank you.
I just want to make a further comment, and I was lucky enough to be there with Penny Sharp when she opened the Giga project, or did the groundbreaking for the Giga project, and the comment she made around trying to cut through bureaucracy, and what has been described to me is the ultimate in bureaucracy that's actually impeding us delivering the services that we need to deliver to our community. And so I'm heartened by the fact that the Mayor's actually approached the local member to advocate on behalf, because I think that this is a classic example of where bureaucracy is standing in the way of actually us delivering our services. Thank you.
Councillor Doran.
Thank you. I had previous questions, but they've been answered already. So the two that I have, please, is on page 99 of the attachments, and just referring to two small things. One is libraries, which is towards the bottom, the last quarter of that page. And I'm just wondering, so I'll ask both the questions. So the library building maintenance and other operational expenses like fire and safety testing, automatic door inspections, monthly security alarm monitoring fees were not included in the original budget. And they're ongoing maintenance and operational expenses, so I'm just wondering how they got missed. And then the other thing was in the last line, which is no budget was originally allocated for the general maintenance, inspections and electrical equipment at the Kentucky Creek Dam. So I'm just wondering how they were also left out of the budget.
I can't answer specifically, councillor, but I'll give you an answer. I think councillors would have seen the growth and improvement in things like the financial accounting around this place, and and certainly around the governance of the organisation at an operational level. We are becoming aware of things, like fire checks, for example, that are an annual requirement on everything. Many of the buildings weren't on the list. They're now on the list, which would explain probably some of the increase. I haven't checked that that's the source, but I would imagine there's been an impact there. The security requirements that we've had to increase for various reasons at both this building and the depot and others, those sorts of things are continuing to increase the budget beyond CPI increases as we come across them. There have been some regulatory requirements around water supply and dams, that some of which are new, but some of which were around but not being done. They're now being done. So all of those things, I think, lead to increases that may not have been recognised when the last budget was set. So that's my general answer. I can go on and do the research if you'd like more detail.
Councillor Blazer.
Mr. Mayor, just one last comment, just given the substance of all that we've just discussed and the significant financial challenges. The last thing I just wanted to highlight was on page 21 of the open agenda and reports, the statement that the third QBRS is in line with the original budget. I take issue with the accuracy of that statement. I don't think our financial position as at the end of the third QBRS is anything like in line with the original approved budget.
Thank you, Councillor Blazer. Councillors, I have moved by Councillor O'Connor. Seconded, please. Councillor Mailer. Council receive and notes the third quarterly budget review summary for 2024 2025-26 financial year. And 2, adopts the adjustments to budget allocations. All those in favour? No? Councillor O'Connor, hand up? Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, councillors. Councillors, item 13.6, the local government remuneration tribunal determination for mayor and councillors. Councillors, I was distressed to see that there's a swap of emails suggesting that we not give ourselves the 3.7% that's listed here. I can't look around the room and I'll leave Councillor Wright out of this because I don't know how much work he's done. But if we're going to argue that we're underpaid, to turn down this or wind it back just doesn't make any logical sense to me. So while I will move it from the floor, and then if people want to make alterations to that, so be it. But I believe that there isn't a person in this room that's not working really hard, and it's probably the most difficult 12 months that we've faced. And quite frankly, for the money, it hardly touches the edges. So I'm going to move it from the chair. People are welcome to their own thoughts. Thank you. The motion is, the recommendation is printed. People want to speak for or against it? Please. Councillor Dora.
I did just briefly see some of the emails going around, but I didn't have time or speak to them. But my notes are no increase. This was prior to any of that. I just wrote down, we went to the top rate last time. It's not about the dollars. Being a councillor is something we do on behalf of our community. Going into a special rate variation, I'm not comfortable. I will not be comfortable to go to the maximum rate.
Maybe Councillor O'Connor, you might tell people how you're going to wind back the councillors' payments before we proceed any further with this discussion.
Mr Mayor, my first intention was in fact to defer determination in this item, mainly because all of my thoughts are about the effect of the 28% increase that we are expecting from our community. So my calculation was to bring back the maximum so that there was a figure which would be 28% different to the maximum. That was my calculation. That's the way I was going to do it. I understand what the Mayor's saying, because basically I have voted for the maximum from the time it was first done on the 25th of June 2014. However, I think we're in a different environment now, and I really do think that we need, as councillors, to be able to say to the community, we've taken the bullet as well. And for that reason, I will put my alternative motion that a council approves the following annual fees for the 2027 in accordance with the annual determination made by local government remuneration. 1, approves the annual fees for councillors at the rate of 11,000, at the reduced rate of 11,290 effective from the 1st of July. And 2, approves the annual fee for the Mayor at the maximum rate of 31,510 effective from the 1st of July 2026, making the payment to the Mayor of 31,510 plus the fee adopted by councillors. And 3, approves the payment of the mayoral fee to the Deputy Mayor whenever the Deputy Mayor stands in for the Mayor for a period in excess of 1 month, effective from the first. 1 month. This is the second change that I'm
Oh,
making.
sorry. Okay, I thought you just misread it.
And deducts this from the mayoral allowance. The basis of the alterations are, there are two changes. One is the change of the proposed annual fee for councillors from the maximum rate of 14,450 to 11,290. The reduction of 3,160 is 28% of 11,290. And this 28% foregone is in line with the additional burden being placed upon Uralla ratepayers. And two, the change from the period from which the Deputy Mayor is to stand in for the Mayor before payment and deductions are made. The current Deputy Mayor has expressed the belief that the period of 1 week does not involve the additional work to warrant the payment. That's my statement, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak for or against? Because we've got two separate discussions going on. One from Councillor Doran talking about not increasing the rates for councillors and for the mayor. The second. Sorry, you didn't say it.
Right.
Okay,
If
Councillor Doran.
if I can just perhaps clarify what I said.
Well, either
when-
I heard it or I didn't hear you.
What I'd like to clarify, if I may, is that when nobody was saying anything, so I said, well, I'll kick off and mention what my notes were off the top of my head before I saw any emails. I don't know anything, but I just said no increase. We went to the top rate last time, that it's not about the dollars, that we need to think about the situation now our residents are going to be in as far as an SRV goes. I didn't make reference to the mayor or the councillors or anything specific. That was just my comment that I'm not comfortable as an elected councillor to go to the maximum rate. That's all. Having heard Councillor O'Connor's, I wasn't aware of what his alternate resolution was, so I'm comfortable with that. And Mr. Mayor, if you still want the increase and to go with that, then it does make me think about the popularly elected mayor and what that might look like for someone else who, it's going to be hotly contested with you already saying you're not going to stand. And, it will mean that at a higher rate, there will be more of a burning desire, and we know who some of those people might be. And it's going to be very interesting times. So I think we need to just sort of keep it all in a bit of perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett.
I think there's a bit of overreach here. What we're asking from an SRV is a 28% followed by 23, is it? Over 2 years on a proportion of the rates and charges charged to our community. And what we're applying for in the conversation and the proposal by Councillor O'Connor is we apply it to 100% of the fees and charges for the councillors. And so whilst I'm not opposed to the idea, I think that, it's a bit of overreach in terms of applying it to 100% of the councillors' fees as an SRV related reduction in the fees. So I question the methodology that Councillor O'Connor's applied. I also want to reiterate the amount that councillors are paid for the work they do is a small proportion and certainly doesn't reflect the value of the work that's actually contributed by councillors. And the other part of it is that as a proportion of the overall budget, it's such a small part. So I question the methodology of Councillor O'Connor proposal, but also question how we incentivise people that might be thinking of as standing that have the skills and capacity to do this or perform this role if we continue to actually undermine the value of the role in terms of a monetary position. So whilst I have sympathy for the argument, I also have a thought to the sustainability and the resilience of people standing for council and the resilience of council, because the reality is councillors are being asked to shoulder a significant burden on behalf of our community for what is pittance. And for anyone that's actually got some resources in the game, that are alternative to it, if you look at a pro rata basis, which I do from time to time, what I contribute to council in terms of time and effort is certainly disproportionately weighted towards council rather than the work I do. And so I think that we need to think very carefully about what the longer term outcome of a decision that we might make in relation to Councillor O'Connor's proposal.
Councillor Burrows, and welcome. Sorry, and Sam, hope things are okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your kind wishes. All is currently okay. I agree entirely that our payment as councillors is disproportionate to the work that we do, but if it was proportionate, it would be a lot higher than 14,450. I don't think anyone in this room is doing it for the money. I do think that the mayor's fee should be as much as we can possibly do, because I think that you do more work than any of us, and that's only going to increase with the rest. I think that actually the optics of us understanding that our ratepayers have a 28% increase on their rates coming, or a possible 28. They're going to have a rise in their rates of a certain percentage depending on ad valorem and cost basis. I don't think it's a bad thing for us to go, we see it and we'll take it too, because whether it's 11,290 or 14,450, it's not covering anything we do. So why don't we just give it back?
Councillor Phil?
I think we're representatives of our community, so we have to lead and show that we are acknowledging the issues that they face and trying to do, I guess, our bit to help out. So having, to me, at the end of the day, $3,000 over 12 months doesn't even touch the sides of what we do in time or energy or effort or travel or anything like that. So it doesn't, to me, that bottom dollar doesn't exactly cover anything that we do. So for us to show our community that have trusted us to be in these roles, we have to show them that we're listening to them and doing our bit as well.
Councillor Arnold?
I think that symbolism is powerful, and I think the gesture that we are considering making is symbolic. And so, backing on what Councillor Phillips just said, I think there's great benefit in making a symbolic gesture to our community.
Just before I ask Councillor Blakester, a symbolic gesture for councils may be not to take an increase, not to wind it back by 28% or whatever Councillor O'Connor thinks we can pay. So anyway, food for thought. Councillor Blakester?
Councillor, did you want? I was just mindful of Councillor Last.
Thank you, Councillor Blakester. I just want to make the point that it isn't just symbolism taking a reduction. It is a real acknowledgement of a personal act by councillors on behalf of their community. Secondly, it cannot affect the mayor's remuneration because of the workload placed on mayors in any context, and particularly in the context of a shire like Uralla. So I think that no matter what we may be worth, the proposed motion from Councillor O'Connor reflects very well the state of the nation. In fact, if you're thinking about how we can contribute to people's well-being beyond the financial.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We may end up being the two black sheep here tonight on this one. Yeah, I have strongly different views on this. If the time these roles we perform was worked out on an hourly rate, there's not an industrial relations agreement in this country that would allow it. This is modern slavery, literally. The only reason we get away with it is because it's under the pretense of politics. We are some of the lowest paid local councillors in the state and the country, as compared with the responsibilities we take on. And I take umbrage that taints the community mindedness and the integrity of the ethic that we apply to this work. I don't see these as mutually exclusive. The CPI increase is 0.3% of the shortfall of our costs that we're looking to address with an SRV. This will make no difference whatsoever. Yet what it does is reflect how we value ourselves, or more to the point, how we don't. And that's what I take umbrage with, is that this is a very substantial responsibility we take on. At a personal level, I have to take annual leave from work to fulfil these duties. So I forego holidays. I lose money on my tax return from being here. And we're having a conversation saying, well, we should just suck it up, you know. I have such strong feelings different to that. We recognise and value our staff. We've been through multiple processes in that regard, and we still have significant challenges to attract and retain staff in an increasingly competitive marketplace. Yet we're just trashing these representation roles, these elected roles, and that for me buys into some of the really toxic discourse in this community about, like, I've read how many comments on Facebook around the SRV that, well, you know, we should stop paying all councillors. Like, well, see where that gets you to. I mean, we didn't even have a contested election. We did have a very contested by-election. That didn't surprise me. But if it weren't for the actions of a couple of councillors, and Councillor Doran in particular, we wouldn't have even had 9 registered candidates for the last general election. We would have gone straight to a by-election, and going off what it cost us for the most recent by-election, that would have cost our ratepayers more than all of our fees added together. So I feel that there's perspective missing here. I think our accountability and our performance, I wouldn't say it needs to be commensurate with what we paid, because that would fall into the category of you pay peanuts and you get monkeys. We're being held accountable to standards of $30 million turnover, $500 million asset organisations, and we don't even get paid enough to cover our costs of being here. And it's not worth claiming those costs, because you spend more time claiming it and going through paperwork than that's worth it. So that whole perspective is outrageous. And if we're in Queensland, we'd be on quadruple what we're talking about here, and we'd still have complaints in the community that it's not worth it. That how do you do that with a daily life if you've got kids, if you've got full-time work, if you're trying to run a business? So there's real mismatches here, and I don't think this is the area to solve our cost challenges at the moment. That's my views.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I?
Could we have the other motion on screen, please?
Yeah. Can you put that up there, the Councillor O'Connor's motion, please?
I think Councillor Blakester makes a he does make a valid point. And, I mean, you can clearly see we don't talk before council meetings. My first thought was no increase. And as an active volunteer, as you know, we all are in our community, like I just never expect, I don't, there's no way I get paid. I mean, I just don't get paid for what I do. And so I kind of just expect that. And yeah, but like you're right, and maybe we need to think of ourselves differently. I don't know. I just don't like the wording in the original, which is that take the fee to the maximum rate. I just feel like that's just rough in a current climate, I guess.
Thanks, councillors. And I think, obviously, councillors are aware of my thoughts on this. In the 2 years that I've been mayor, there's been no claim for expenses from any of the councillors. So people before could travel in, do things. So, okay, yes, we take a car. Yes, go to Mudgee. I expect council to pay for our meals and a drink with our meals. But really with thousands of dollars in front as far as the community goes. My way forward is if I can get a seconder to the recommendation, and if that falls over, thank you, Councillor Blakestad, then we will go to the alternate motion of Councillor O'Connor's. All in favour of, Councillor Burrows?
May we just have a bit longer of a chat about this, if that's okay?
Well, am I allowed to move into coffee and tea and do it, or do you want to sort it
No, I
now?
think it should be. No,
Okay, yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I just think that I absolutely understand what you and Councillor Blackster are saying, and one half of me does agree with that. However, unlike Queensland, which has a completely different funding structure to New South Wales, that's never going to happen here. And I don't think that you should be doing this job because of the $11,290 or the $14,450 that you might be getting for it. Because that, if you think about it as that, then if you're thinking about it as that's what you're worth, then you're not even going to have time to read your papers. So I look at this as practically an honorary position. I'm proud to hold it. I'm proud to have been chosen by the community in the first round and then allowed to stand in the second round. And I don't want to feel like I just don't see the payment as being anything other than a bit of a rubber stamp and a pat on the head. It's got nothing to do with what we do. I think our work here is far more important than the remuneration of it.
Councillor O'Connor.
My intention in putting up 11,290 was to be able to use it as a selling point. I take Councillor Doran's point is that the alternative is to not take an increase. And that is the same message. It's not the same amount, but it is the same. So, look, I'm quite ambivalent. I mean, I would be fighting every year for the maximum. Don't get me wrong. And I'm taking it this year as something different because of the SRV. So I would quite happily, if someone else wanted to put up that it be just no increase, then I would be quite happy to support that.
Sorry, councillors, I'll throw to the governance manager just to confirm, but I believe council only has the ability to make a decision within the range published by IPART. You can't go lower than the maximum, the minimum. The minimum is actually a floor, and council is not legally able to resolve anything less than that minimum floor that's been published for this year. Yeah. Yes.
My comment is that it was more about the message we would be sending. There's an equal message if we don't take an increase, or there should be no disadvantage by accepting where we were at the maximum. So I'm ambivalent, but I just want a good message to come.
Mr Mayor, I would ask Councillor O'Connor not to be ambivalent. I would ask him to remain firm on his motion. This is more than optics. This is more than messaging. This is legitimate action by elected officials to recognise the realities of what's around us. I accept all of Councillor Blakester's remarks about work. However, I assure you, when considering standing for the by-election, it was nothing to do with the Remuneration Tribunal's offer whatsoever, nor will it ever be in New South Wales, in my opinion. So I would simply say that I would welcome an opportunity to second Councillor O'Connor's motion if he remains committed to its objectives. Thank you.
Just hold that thought. If the original motion that I moved falls over, if I don't get a seconder or it's voted down, we'll go to the alternate motion and you get an opportunity then. Okay, guys. I need a seconder on my motion and then we'll discuss that. And if it falls over, then we'll go to Councillor O'Connor's. Councillor Blakester?
Councillor Blakester's.
Yep, thank you. Councillors, all those in favour of the recommendation as printed? The motion's lost. We go to Councillor O'Connor's. Put the second one up, please, Mrs. Westbrook. The alternate motion has been moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Please record my vote against that. Yep. Council's item 13.7, the State of the Environment Report. No, below you. You can wait for 6:30. You're not that important, councillors. Unless Councillor Blakester or Councillor Mayle want a cup of tea, we're continuing on. Thank you very much. 13.7, State of the Environment Report 2022 to 2025. Recommendation of Council: 1, notes the submission received. 2, notes the staff responses and amendments to the report related to the submissions. 3, adopts the amended State of Environment Report 2022 to 25. And 4, authorises the General Manager to finalise the report for publication. I'll need somebody to move that before we... Councillor Blakester. Are there any questions, councillors? The seconder? Thank you, Councillor Phelps. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. No, we're on an hourly rate. Uh, 13.8, smart water meter report, deferral of project implementation. The recommendation of council notes the update on the proposed smart water meter project. 2, that notes the smart water meters have previously been identified as potential future water demand management issue for council. 3, does not proceed with the smart water meter project at this time due to not available capital expenditure budget to allocate to this project. And B, council awaiting the results, costs, risks and implementation lessons from neighbouring council smart meter works. And 4, receives a future report when a suitable funding source becomes available and sufficient information is available from neighbouring councils, smart meter implementation to support a revised business case. If you're going to move it, otherwise I want somebody else to move it first and then you can speak to it. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you. I was at the UNE Renewable Energy Forum last week, and the Armidale Council were talking about looking to get funding for their sewer upgrade because it's come to the end of its life, and they were hoping that the renewable energy, one of the legacy projects might be that they can get a new sewer system. So with that in mind, and in reading this report, I just wonder if we keep it on the books, so to speak, and seek funding through alternative means that may mean that we end up with our water system being a legacy project as a result of the RES. Imagine.
An excellent idea. Anybody else wants to? Councillor Blakester?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. 3 questions, please, which they're pretty straightforward, I think. Just what are the risks and costs of not proceeding? I totally understand the capital and financial constraints are under, but nonetheless, I think that's a key question. In terms of communicating this decision, are there community stakeholders that we need to be mindful of that have got some expectation or otherwise around this project? I'm just mindful it's been kicking around for a while. And then third and last, the references to the demand management plan, that plan's dated April 2018. It states that there will be 5-yearly updates to it. That obviously hasn't happened because the plan doesn't make any reference even to the RES, which is obviously a very significant game changer for everything to do with demand management. So my third question is, what's the status and intention around that demand management plan?
I think the first issue for me is that until we get our heads around what the challenges are and that the acting director talked about around the water capital requirements and the depreciation, that this would be a step too far at this stage. Now, I take Councillor Doran's comment that if it was some other way. The other bit for Armidale, their sewage treatment plant, we had a similar plant at Uralla that we decommissioned 20 years ago. Their system, it's only that they pump back onto irrigation land that they get away with it. They're on the sensitive waters thing. So they have that work needs to be done. I think that it's an excellent idea for us to say, let's park it, get the other information, if it would get up as a legacy issue, because and all the councils need to think about what a legacy issues might look like, noting that the minister's announcement on the $60 million had no information with it, no breakup, didn't even say how many councillors were in it, because by the end of the day, the mayor from Glen Innes and the mayor from Inverell, and I hope you're listening, ladies, had their photo opportunity with the minister just to make sure they weren't forgotten. So, look, the reality is, I don't think we're in the good space now to do it, but I think in the future. So, sorry, there was another question, Councillor Blakeson. I'll get the acting director to respond. Whether there's an expectation. Yeah. I'll just finish off, sorry, one more thought. One of the things that was highlighted approximately 18 months ago when we looked at the water billing and how far that has got behind was the meter replacement program that the acting general manager put in place. So now we've got a lot of those issues where we weren't getting meters replaced within what that hadn't been functional for
30 years.
yeah, a lot of time. So we've got to the stage where while they're old technology, they're now functional, which we didn't have at the start. So, so the arguments, and I know the acting general manager's been through a number of them. We seem to have got them back to just talking about how come you're using so much water. The advantage of the smart meters for anybody that breaks an internal pipe is almost instantaneously somebody comes in the office, and if I reflect on my time at Canada, it could come into the office and it gave almost anybody that went above, if the normal usage was at 200 kilolitres and suddenly it was 500 kilolitres, it would show up instantaneously, so people didn't have long-term leaks. So there is that advantage, and there is the issue around meter reading. And again, with the help of contractors, we've been able to identify the location of every meter, make sure there's access to it. So a lot of work, but that's the next step. So I'm not saying we should wipe it away, but I think I'm strongly support this recommendation at this stage.
Did you? Councillor, just going to your point, I think we started talking about this about 2.5 years ago, or maybe even a little bit earlier, when I first got here, and it was my recommendation to council we seriously consider it at that time, because almost every meter that we had was not reading properly because of its age and that sort of thing. That risk has now largely been addressed. There's been a significant uplift in the number of new meters installed over the last 2 years, and we're not aware, for the first time in a long while, of any meters that aren't reading correctly. The benefits of this are obvious, threefold. One, the homeowners or users of our system can get an hour-by-hour update on their water usage. They can set parameters on their meter that if this much water is going out of it, an alarm goes, and so it saves them from some of those devastating issues we've seen where somebody's had a leak under their house, their problem, not ours, because it's on their side of the meter. Could not see it for love or money. There was no sign outside of the house boundary, and they get an $1,800 bill, and that's the first time they figure out there's something wrong with their system. So it saves that sort of thing. It would save us significant money on having people physically go and read the water meters every year. That's a significant outgoing. And I think when we did the original calculation, the total capital cost of upgrading every meter to a smart meter, putting in the software and wireless requirements to manage it, and paying a lease fee for the software each year, the payback period would be 4 or 5 years of that investment, and we'd then get 20 years. We'd put new meters in at the 10-year period probably. Those were the assumptions, but a very good business case. That hasn't really changed, except that Uralla Shire jumped before us, and they're currently going through this process. We are now benefiting from their experience, which hasn't been as smooth as we assumed it would be at the start. I think it's still a good system. It's still the way of the future. But at the moment, the primary barrier to us doing this is we would benefit more from having more renewed water mains than this system at this point in time. That's really sort of where we're up to. Acting Director.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and look, there's not an awful lot I can add. I think it was a great bit of detail the Mayor and the Acting GM gave you. The one, you did make a point, Councillor Blakesley, about communication with stakeholders and also about not losing sight of grant opportunities. I think they're both really relevant points. Well, this is one of the things that we're working on at the moment. So the staff are actually working on an integrated water cycle management strategy as we speak. There's also work happening around groundwater investigations and also looking at an emergency bore access and things. So there's a whole sort of a range of work that's happening around water, greater term water security, around demand management might need to occur. So we're looking at then off the back of that around how a whole piece of communications can be undertaken with the community so that we're getting probably a much more regular message out around, what our capacity is like, what are the issues that we're facing at the moment, what is your council actually trying to do in the scene of sort of this longer term water security for the LGA. So I think in that sense, that's where we'll probably find the best opportunity for some engagement. To the point around grant opportunities, that we're only suggesting a deferral in that sense, that should an opportunity pop up around grants, we're keeping our eye out for any of these opportunities. But as the acting GM says, at this point in time, I think we've got some more basic issues or more foundational issues that we need to address across our water and wastewater assets at this stage.
Thank you, councillors. A seconder, please. I have moved by Councillor Burrows. Councillors, the council notes the upgrade to the proposed smart water meter project. 2, notes the smart water meters have previously been identified as a potential future water demand management initiative for council. 3, does not proceed with the smart water meter project at this time due to A, no available capital expenditure budget to allocate to the project, and B, council awaits the results, costs, risks and implementation lessons from neighbouring councils' smart meter works, and 4, receives a future report when a suitable funding source becomes available and sufficient information is available from neighbouring councils and the smart meter implementation to support the revised business case. Moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Burrows. All those in favour? Thank you. 2 things, Councillor Doran, I think item 4 covers if we find a way to do that. And the other thing was, will my phone tell me if my wife's watering my roses? I will now take a move to a cup of tea. Somebody, Councillor Doran, Councillor Phil, all those in favour? 13.9, the closure of Council of Public Roads, Part Old Gossip Road, Eastern New England Solar Project Stage 2. Council have a recommendation on the bottom of page 32. Somebody prepared to move that, and I'll read it out if Councillor O'Connor. Questions, councillors? Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions. One, the text of this item suggests that there's a significant number of closures coming. Is that correct? Secondly, very happy to see full cost recovery from the proponent. How is that happening?
Acting General Manager, we want the Group Manager to respond.
Group Manager Infrastructure Service.
Through you, Acting GM. Councillor Wright, you weren't privy to we'd had a bit of a councillor workshop around this to answer some of those questions, but you weren't privy to it. So I'll give a detailed but short sort of answer, and I can pass on the presentation. But yes, we will most likely get a lot of closures of these council public roads. They are hangovers from a time when they'd put roads between fields on the old parish maps, and with the size and scale of some of these solar farms, they spread across many fields and many paper roads. So we're anticipating that we will get a large amount of these. That will put a strain on our staff because it is a bit of a process. So we are looking to outsource that process as much as possible so that we can not burn the staff with the all costs being recovered. Therefore, we can go out to the market. The way that we will be tracking the costs is that I've got an internal work order system that I manage my time. I'm typically the person that manages it. We do have a fee that's included in our fees and charges, which is an upfront cost after the council resolution of $15,000. That is the minimum charge, i.e. if it goes over that cost, then those will be passed on to the proponent or the applicant. So what that means is that if they don't proceed with it, there'll still be that cost. If they do proceed with it, that goes over $15,000, there'll have to be a justification, which would be invoices from the lawyers, invoices from the valuer and things like that to justify the costs. And on top of that, there's also the cost for the sale of the land. So there will actually be a sale at the end that'll tally up all these costs, and that'll be lawyers from both parties. So a bit of a process. I will forward through that presentation just for your benefit because it goes through all the steps of about 15. But yeah, we will see a lot of these, and it will take up some time, that's for sure. And we certainly want to make sure that we're recovering the costs.
What's the process of outsourcing that you are going to use?
I'm speaking to external planning companies at the moment. So planners that have gone out to the private market. At the moment, I haven't got any feedback from them yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Blakester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one point that I'd like to raise is under the performance measures, and this is all good and fine and really appreciate being able to work through it in detail in an information session, but the performance measure achievement of cost neutral, I don't think is quite accurate enough because my understanding is it's full cost recovery plus the sale of the land. So we'll end up with more money. So it's not cost neutral, it's above and beyond that by the value of whatever the land is realised for at the end of the day. So I'd just like that one minor change made to the performance measure of something like full cost recovery plus realisation of the sale of the land itself.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thanks, Councillor. It's a good point because the cost recovery is genuine cost recovery, and the end result of the sale should be a surplus.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the intent. It's probably not documented that way.
If there are no other questions, councillors, if I could have, I've got a second, haven't I? Councillor Phil. Yeah, thank you. The motion is that Council 1 commences the road closure process under the Roads Act 1993, New South Wales, for the council public roads within Part Old Goswick Road, with the intention that upon closure and vesting in council the land to be sold to the adjoining landowner or proponent. 2, delegates the authority to the General Manager to undertake all necessary actions to progress the road closure process, including public notification, consultation and submissions to Crown Lands. 3, receives a further report following completion of the public notification process to consider any submissions received, determine whether to proceed with the road closure, and C, consider the classification and disposal of the land, including sale to the proponent at a value not less than the independent market valuation. And 4, notes that A, the road is not formally closed until publication of the New South Wales Government Gazette. B, any subsequent sale of the land is subject to the road being formally closed. And C, all costs associated with the proposed road closure process, including valuation, survey, consultants, staff and legal costs, are to be borne by the applicant in accordance with the Uralla Shire Council currently adopted fees and charges. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Councillors, item 13.10, major projects in capital works, infrastructure and development. The recommendation of council notes the infrastructure works update as of the April 2026, and 2, notes that the King Street and Maitland Street roundabout project remains high risk due to contractor availability, constrained delivery timeframes, broader industry capacity constraints, and active mitigation strategies are being implemented. So can I have somebody move that, and then we can open for discussion? Thank you, Councillor Burrows. Group Manager, do you wish to speak to these items, please?
Happy to, through you, Mr. Mayor. What you noticed, the first major change from last month to this month was that the Uralla Creek catchment project has been taken from a high risk to low risk. The reason for that is that even without asking, the funding body gave everyone an extra year to finish those projects, which was we're hugely grateful for. It doesn't actually solve the issue of finding contractors and getting it under budget, but it gives us a bit more time to find a contractor that may be willing to do it, or at least do part of the works for the budget that's been allocated. So that's the main reason for the reduction in, risk for that project. We're still actively working on it, even though they give you a year slips by pretty quickly. So we are working on that, but it does ease the pressure, which is great news. The other project that remains as a high risk is the King Street / Maitland Street roundabout. That is still hard to find a contractor for, / no contractors. We are advocating to the body, which is a different funding body, to extend out their timeline to give us more time to complete the works. Realistically, if we don't find a contractor to do it, then we're out of chances and we'll probably have to give the money back. Where there is some risk is that the nuance of this project, which is the local roads and community infrastructure round 4, is that they don't fund design only projects. They fund design and construction projects. We've designed the roundabout. We haven't constructed the roundabout, and there's some risk that they will come back and say, well, we're not going to pay you for the design part of it, which was news to us today. I thought it's a project. We didn't just design it and then not intend to do it. We're still intending to do it, but unless they've got a handful of contractors that they can pull out of somewhere and give to us, we're not going to be able to do the construction. So that gives us a bit of risk around that. Where they have been helpful is that they're allowing us to extend the scope of some other previous project to capture costs that we didn't think were previously able to be captured. And that's part of, if you recall, we had footpaths done in Bundarra under the LRCI 4, and we also had some pavement works done in Kingstown, reseal works under LRCI 4, which has meant that we can actually claim an extra $112,000 under this package of works, which again was news today. So the roundabout represents a cost of $193,000 for construction and $76,000 for the design. If we lose the design, that's $269,000 we're at risk of having to give back. When you offset that against $112,000 that we can now claim, the net risk there is $157,000. It's still a risk, it's still unfortunate, but it's actually a better position than what we thought we were yesterday. if we had to give the roundabout back. What we are trying to do is we are trying to propose to them, well, we can't do the roundabout, but can we claim previous projects that we've already done under the LRCI? They meet the guidelines, but they weren't previously identified projects, which are Pine Grove Road and Kingstown Road resheets or reseals. They're a bit apprehensive because obviously we're retrospectively asking to do the projects under the funding, but as we also know, they don't really like giving money back. So we'll see what they say. So I was speaking to the team this afternoon, and that was the feedback they gave me. So they're putting in that variation this week, and we'll see what we come back with. But I guess the net risk there to us is 157,000. We were previously looking at 193. So we are better off overall. Not ideal, but that's why that project is still a problem. Now, it's not represented in the report because this report is for last month, and I recognise that it's a little bit annoying being 1 month delayed. So that'll be up sort of in next report, but I thought that was pertinent information to share with the councillors at the moment. The other key points there we did talk about last month were the ongoing dry weather, although that's changed a little bit in the last week or so, and more so in the coming week. With our routine maintenance grading is subject to weather conditions. It's also worthwhile noting that our shire is not all raining. We do have areas of the shire that are still in, I wouldn't necessarily say significant drought, but are still pretty dry. And that also is the road slashing side of things. We are slashing less just due to the fire risk. So even though we have experienced some rain, we're not necessarily out of drought conditions, so we don't want to jump straight back into spending or using water left, right and centre. And I'm sure Councillor Philp is a member of the RFS, you're not necessarily sitting on your laurels yet. That said, we are expecting a significant rain event in the next couple of days. So fingers crossed all the water lands where we need it to do and it doesn't cause too much flash flooding and runoff and erosion. But we are preparing for that as well. I think our downhill neighbours will probably feel the effects of that a little more than us at this stage. That's enough for me. Open to any questions that anyone may have.
Councillor Arnold?
This is probably a strange way to go about it, but it's a curiosity for me about why we're attempting to do the roundabout when everything seems to tell us that that's not happening or not working, even though the design's been done. I wonder what the barriers are to foregoing the roundabout and moving it to the other projects, as you suggested. And I do acknowledge that there is a community, an emotional driver behind the construction of this roundabout. However, the current situation on that corner that I drive through 2 or 3 times a day seems to be working, and I wonder if we couldn't better put that money across to the other work that you suggested.
Through Mr. Mayor. Great question. It has been raised by Councillor Mailer previously as to what is our criteria for choosing projects. What do we, why do we do some projects and not others? I don't have an answer for the roundabout because, I do have an answer for the roundabout. As you noted that there was a fatality at that roundabout. There was a decision made, and I guess in my role I was fulfilling a predecessor's decision to put that as a grant funded project. Once it's an approved grant funded project, it is hard to change. I guess the only position we have now is that we cannot find anyone to do the works. So please, funding body, can we change it? Because otherwise we're going to go through this dance of trying to get the money back and then saying, oh, you need to spend it and blah, blah, blah. So perhaps they'll be more lenient in changing it. There was an opportunity that the acting director and I talked about where reallocating the roundabout works to the R2R funds, and then changing a R2R project into that one that's been done and retrospectively doing that. That wasn't looked too favourably by the funding body. We are at the funding body's behest, and we've got 1 month until it technically closes. So we're a little bit sort of short on time, and the patience is running out from the funding body, which is why we've been persevering with the roundabout as much as we could. It's just now that we're getting to the point where we will not be able to do the roundabout, that the funding body will probably go, oh, okay, you've tried. Failing all of that, we could reallocate resources for the month of June of our internal teams and do as much of the work as we can to burn up that money that's remaining. And then we're not going to do half a roundabout. We're going to do drainage works or sewerage works or curb works and things like that. But to answer your original question, why the roundabout? I guess we were in a position where we had to do it, and we had to have a pretty good justification to the funding body to change. And I guess we have one now.
Yes, I think for Councillor Arnold that it was part of what was originally the Traffic Committee determination and the Transport for New South Wales support for that project. So understanding the challenges, it's still the preferred option from both Transport for New South Wales and Uralla Shire Council's Traffic Committee. So if it's doable, it's still the preferred option. Thank you. Councillors, sorry.
Sorry, can I just ask one more question? So at what point was that decision made by the Traffic Committee? Like when are we talking that original proposal came through?
I would say probably within 12 months of the accident that occurred, the fatal accident that occurred. There was some frustration around stop signs, attempts around stop signs and giveaway signs to try and limit what is, in essence, the Walker bypass. And so issues around speed management. So that decision's probably been on our books a couple of years.
Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
You don't give it that job yet, I haven't walked out.
Sorry. My apologies, Mr Mayor. It was on the books when I got here. That was 3 years ago, and it had been on the books for some time at that stage. So it precedes the election of this current council.
As well, like when that accident did happen, then it came to light there would have been a number of near misses, that it was actually, a long-standing issue that just hadn't really come to the surface. And then of course it was a very emotive, in the community. And I do wonder though, like the steps that have been taken, I think have made a real difference. And I think there is greater community awareness now. So yeah, anyway, that's all I could say.
Thank you. Councillor Blackster.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. So the financial implications, so Bridge Street and the delays to the works by Transport for New South Wales. And I note on page 305 of the attachments that this has been reallocated into the next budget year. But my question is, what are the implications for our budget? I'm always concerned when we just move a chunk of money from one year to the next, because each year is not exactly the same. And given the financial situation we're in, as per our earlier discussion, so that's one question. And then my other question is, there's a statement on page 41 of the agenda document about workforce capacity issues again, and that's was coming through reports last month for the first time in my mind, but it's coming through more regularly. I wondered if a bit more could be said about that. And then lastly, just to request that, again in the works report, page 306 particularly, but there's a whole lot of target dates that are at least a year out of date. So if they could be updated to what they are now. There's quite a few that are 2025 dates.
I'll ask the Acting Director to answer the first question, and then I'll get the Group Manager to answer the other two. So.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Mayor, and through you, Councillor Blackster. So just in terms of the shifting of the works on Bridge to next year, you might recall earlier when we were talking about the R2R grant, and that effectively we've got a sum total across the 4-year period of those grants. So effectively, when you saw the report from the CFO, we were reducing the budget this because we weren't going to spend those funds under that grant in the current year. So it's just been moving forward. It will be part of our application process to authorise the use of grant funds for that project in the next year. So it's not having an implication, it's more of a delivery and a time frame issue in that sense. So my latest understanding, and Mr. McClendon may choose to just to confirm this, I understand that the latest time frame we've been given is October for those works to be undertaken. Yes.
Group Manager Infrastructure, if you could answer the other two questions, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. October is the current forecast for Transport for New South Wales. We're really hoping that they actually do it because it'd be a great project for the town. And it's causing financial difficulties for us in terms of just juggling it around. So to answer the first, well, I'll go to the target date completion. That was the target date completion. What I'll do is I'll update that report for next month to show the current target date and have an existing target date. And what that does show is just some of these projects have been around for a while. And we're not trying to shy away from the fact that we haven't necessarily delivered in some projects, but yeah, you're right, some of them are 2025, and it just goes to show how some of the delays we've had last year with some of the external things. In terms of workforce capacity, we're operating with about 8 to 9 people away at any one time in the civil team. That comes down to sickness, people taking leave, people away, RDOs, and all that sort of thing. Got a workforce of around about 30 on a good day. So we are actively recruiting. I think we have about 9 applications out as well to try and find people. But what that shows is that the external or the private market is also pretty strong, and we see that as well with just the response to our potential contracts and things like that and RFQs. We're getting very little response from local. Then we extend the circle, and regional we get a few, and now we're going out to Port Macquarie, Coffs Harbour and things like that. So you want to support local, but they're all tied up. And that points to a further issue with the res. So not only are we affected in our own internal staff, not being able to recruit or potentially retention with other salaries being offered, but getting contractors is proving to be hard work. And especially because the res is going to be civil heavy and going to have a lot of things that are direct competition to us, we will struggle during that period of time to find contractors at a reasonable rate, probably is the right thing to say as well.
Thank you. Councillor Mailer.
Thanks, Mayor Bell. Question goes back to King Street Maitland Roundabout. I've been lucky enough to see the work that Council's been doing on Laura Creek and that upgrade to Laura Creek. And I'm wondering what we can't do within Council to actually do that work on the King Street Roundabout. And given that we've got a limited amount of water available to do our Shire roads, what equipment and staff might be available to actually implement and do that work to reduce the risk of that project.
Through you, Mayor. Laura Creek is a good project. The roundabout at King Street and Maitland Street is probably important to remind everyone that it is the B-double route around the main road if we have to shut the main road. So the roundabout is quite big and quite a detailed project. It's not just a small roundabout like you have in just the ones that the buses can mount over in Armidale and things like that. It's a proper roundabout. There are a lot of service relocations that will need to be done. As a team, we wanted to outsource a lot of our major projects to contractors because we also need to maintain our operational maintenance works. So what we are seeing is that we are putting a lot of teams onto our projects. We're only really able to do one at a time, and it was anticipated that this roundabout was done 6-12 months ago while we were out doing Barrow, I mean, one of those ones, Goswick Road or something like that. So our team can typically do one at a time, but to actually achieve our capital program, we need to do more than one project at a time, which is why we're outsourcing the roundabout. The question is, can we do the roundabout ourselves? Most likely, but can we do it with all the other works that we've got on at the same time? No. And given that we have the capital program that we have to achieve, and we also have other competing grants, such as the block grant, we do have obligations to finish things in a certain period of time. So if we had nothing else to do, we could have attacked it, but we did have other projects that we needed to do.
Thank you for that. Councillors, I have moved Councillor Burrows a seconder, please. Councillor Blakester. All those in favour? Sorry, I'll read the actual recommendation. The council notes the infrastructure works update as of the April 2026 and notes that the King Street and Maitland Street roundabout project remains high risk due to contractor availability, constrained timeframes, broader industry capacity constraints and active mitigation strategies, and that active mitigation strategies are being implemented. Councillors, I noticed when we were in Midwestern that somebody described local works as being within Australia, so I'm not sure whether you talk about local and regional. It seemed to be very, yeah, Mudgee's got some challenges, that's for sure. Thank you. Councillors, item 1311, the Register of Resolutions Action Status of the 19th of May 2026. The recommendation the council notes the resolution action status report as of the 19th of May 2026. Have I got somebody prepared to move that and discuss it? Thank you, Councillor Blakeston. Any questions, councillors? I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Philp, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Councillors, I'm now moving into confidential section of council. Okay. A seconder, please. Councillor Philp. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors.
Get the recording warmed up.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Item 14.1, Waste Services Update, recommendation that council receive and note the report. Moved by councillor Mailer and seconded by councillor Blakester. All in favour. And item 14.2, the sale of land for unpaid council rates, that council resolved to proceed with recovery action for unpaid council rates for 37 Maitland Street, Uralla, and 2, initiate action to appoint a bankruptcy trustee to administer the estate under option C, and direct the general manager to 1, undertake all required statutory steps to initiate action to appoint a bankruptcy trustee to administer the estate, and 2, prepare necessary documentation, including general manager's certificate and sale notice. Moved by councillor Burrows, seconded by councillor Mailer, and again unanimous vote. Thank you very much, councillors.
Mr Mayor, if I may, just before councillors go, totally unaware until the end of the meeting,